What's an argument you couldn't believe you had to have with an adult? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I once had to explain that going 60 miles per hour meant you would literally travel 60 miles in an hour to a colleague. We were both in our mid-20s at the time. I don't know how they passed math class ever. I had a way too long conversation with a friend to describe how 60 miles per hour was the same as a mile per minute. I shared a video of a company that travels around with a giant treadmill and they challenge people to see how long they can keep Eliud Kipchoge's marathon pace, 13 miles per hour, as he can run a marathon in 2 hours. That's stupid. Why are they speeding it up that fast? Because that's his pace. No, it isn't. That's stupid. Even after explaining that it's 2 miles. Divided by, she was still rolling her eyes. I gave up. Ridiculous pace, but that's his pace. Story 2. That average person knows who Hitler is and what a Nazi salute looks like. They insisted I only could possibly know that because I'm into history, and there's no way they teach the Holocaust in school. When I was like 16, I worked in a trade as a labor position, so I was regularly working with grown men up to 60 years old. One time I'm with a guy who's maybe 30 and another who is a bit older, and a 30-year-old guy goes, "Auschwitz?" Or like Australia. And it turned out he didn't know what the Holocaust was at all. He was pissed that a kid was laughing at him, so he said, "I bet you don't even know about Rochambeau." I didn't. So I looked it up and was like, "Some French soldier who helped the US in the Revolutionary War?" And he said, "No, you idiot. It's another name for rock, paper, scissors." And both of them started laughing at me, hysterically. I think that was the day I truly realized that being an adult didn't mean you were smart or had your crap together. I want to be a laborer at 30 to 50 years old. Story 3. No joke, I went to pick up an item at the grocery store and it was labeled 1/3 LB, and an older lady tapped me on the shoulder and pointed to a competitive item next to it for the same price, but was labeled 1/4 LB. She said, "It's smarter to buy the larger package for the same price. Your wife would know that." She could absolutely not be convinced that 1/3 LB was larger than 1/4 LB. Even explaining the math and showing her the weight in ounces on the package, she wasn't having it. I just laughed to myself and walked away. Story 4. Explaining to someone that a stop sign means stop. This happened to me last month. I honked at him when he didn't stop at the stop sign I was stopped at by my neighbor, where kids and families walk. But I digress. So he pulled over, and he did take the time to stop and ask what my problem was. He said it doesn't matter, it's who gets there first. I know this man knew you stopped at a stop sign, but he wouldn't admit it, and I had to move on at a certain point, LOL. Story 5. Reindeer are real. I am not trying to convince you that there are actually flying deer that pull Santa Claus's sleigh. One of my favorite stories was one year I was Christmas shopping, with my younger brother who was probably 18-ish at the time, at a sporting goods store. I was like, "Hey, they have live reindeer in back, they're pretty cool." He thought I was messing with him. So we went to go look. He just stared blankly at them for a few beats, then meekly asked, ... See, and they fly? Story 6. Working at a grocery store and doing my usual shift, a woman comes up to me. I was one of those people who shopped for other people's orders from 4 a.m. till 1 p.m. at said grocery store. A woman in her 50s comes up to me in the Asian food aisles and is already mad at me because I stepped out of her way with my giant cart. "Where is the grape jelly you add into that Asian sauce?" she asked me. I asked her to be more specific. She pulls out a jar of Concord grape jelly from her cart while rolling her eyes at me. "I need grape jelly that is not this grape jelly, and it's always dough here to make that oriental sauce I make. You guys don't even have the sauce or jelly I need. Why did they even hire you if you don't know basic recipes like this?" She scoffed and rolled along with her cart. I was confused and annoyed by her casual racism, but just went about my day. What in the white people crap? Story 7. When I was a kid, my neighbor had set cage traps for a possum that was tearing up his lawn at night searching for bugs, apparently. One day I came home from school and noticed a cat in the trap, obviously someone's pet as it was wearing a collar. I walk over into his yard to free it, and the guy comes out and goes berserk as I was trying to let it out. I explained it was a house cat, which he could obviously see, but insisted to keep it trapped. I told him to piss off or whatever and let the cat out. He continued to yell at me as I walked away and ignored him. Screw that guy, 30 years later and it still pisses me off. Story 8. We live in Canada, and we were on a road trip. We stopped to take a piss and a tumbleweed came rolling across the way. He tells me that, "Did you know tumbleweeds come from Texas?" At first I thought I was a joke, but the guy was dead serious. These things just tumble across 100,000 kilometers across the mountains and countless fences, rivers, and lakes. It was the dumbest conversation I ever had. And he's one of those guys that always thinks he's right. So me and all my buddies call him Texas Tumbleweed Bryce, still to this day. Story 9. When I was a freshie in college, I tried to explain to a 23-year-old guy who'd missed some required lower division classes that the reason there are different words for most animals is because they reflect the intimacy of the animal. He absolutely wasn't buying that there's any difference between a bull and a cow or a stallion and a mare. I was not about to get into more complex stuff like steers or geldings until he had the basic differences down. Since his list of objections to what I was trying to tell him included the facts that I was 18 and female, our professor cleared it up immediately by having an impromptu 30-minute lesson on animal terminology. He prefaced the entire thing by writing "Take Notes, Pop Quiz Likely" at the top of the board. I don't know how Mr. Senior Guy did, but it was basically a gift of 25 points for the rest of us. Story 10. My cousin was bagging his own groceries at Walmart. Those bags are thin and weak as crap, so he was double bagging. The checkout monitor lady came up and said that he isn't allowed to double bag, it's too wasteful. He informed her that their bags were crap and that he didn't want his groceries to fall out. Her solution was to take half of the groceries in that bag and put them in another bag. He explained multiple times that this would be using the same amount of bags, but she couldn't understand how that was the same thing. After a while, he just said "F it" and went about bagging his groceries. Story 11. Explaining to my second grade teacher that Alaska is bigger than Texas, and yes, the picture on the wall map is smaller. But that is because they are at different scales. The amount of people that don't understand map projections is wild. At least this story is about kids, but when I was a kid, like 8 or 9, the Soviet Union was still around. Me and my friend were playing some kind of a pseudo-strategy game with a standard paper map of the world. The way it was orientated essentially split the Soviet Union, so the eastern and western parts of the map were both the USSR. I remember he was saying our enemy is on both sides of us. I think the idea was we were the US and were trying to beat the Soviets in a war using military-themed toys he had. Admittedly, this friend was 9 or 10, but was completely unable to understand the concept of a country wrapping around a flat map. I think we even tried to explain TI by bending the map so the two parts of the Soviet Union touched and was like, "See? The map has to split somewhere." Kid kept insisting only one of them could be TE Soviet Union. He just could not accept anything else. Story 12. With a 40-year-old woman in South America. I had to explain where babies came from. She had like 17 kids and didn't know why God kept blessing her with more children. She just wanted it to stop as she had been pregnant pretty much her entire adult life. I'm not sure if her husband knew or not. Well, you would think eventually you would put 2 and 2 together after 17 kids that sort of look like the husband she keeps sleeping with. I mean, really ancient peoples understood that lovemaking is babies. If there are any domesticated animals around, which is a safe bet, then you can be sure that they know that lovemaking leads to offspring. Pretty fundamental to making sure you have enough animals around. Also, OP stated that this woman was married. Marriage implies taboos around lovemaking, and taboos around lovemaking imply an understanding that lovemaking means babies. Now, your argument may be religious blinders, maybe, but lovemaking means babies are in the Bible, in Genesis no less. Eve lays with Adam and begets Cain. Dank, you get further in that the only mention to abortion in the Bible is a recipe for an abortifacient to give to a woman who is suspected of infidelity. I think you may be giving this person too much credit. They may, in fact, just be stupid. Story 13. Making hollandaise sauce with vanilla soft-serve ice cream was not acceptable in this universe or any other. So I was a casino chef on the east coast of the US. Transferred to a property in Ohio that had been going feral without an executive chef for the previous 9 months. First couple days I was there, I was just going around and documenting the damage. There was a little sit-down breakfast outlet which was using powdered hollandaise mix for their hollandaise sauce. Bad enough all by itself, I know. One of the ingredients you added to the powder was milk. The following day, I went to that outlet with a list of things to correct, and I planned on making it correctly. Turns out it had already been made for the day by an old-timer with 60 years experience, he claimed. And he casually informed me that he could not find any milk for the hollandaise, so he went over to the buffet and went to the ice cream machine. Said he did it all the time. He got very offended when I threw away his hollandaise, after I tried to explain to him that what he did was totally unacceptable, as was using powdered mix. He yelled a lot, told me I didn't know, and walked off for a while. I made it correctly, and we made it correctly going forward, but that first time I remember thinking I can't believe I'm having this conversation right now. Story 14. I was managing a Chuck E. Cheese, 2 kids redeeming prizes, 2 parents. The kids were being kids bouncing between the 2 prize windows even though they are the same. Parent 1 is annoyed with kid 2 and asks parent 2 to control their kid. I inform the kids and parents that both prize windows are the same so each kid can look in one. Kids continue to be kids and are flip-flopping from side to side like a fish in a boat hoping to find water. Parent 2 was seething from the comment Parent 1 made, so when Kid 1 touches Kid 2, Parent 2 says Parent 1 needs to control their kid, and the parents start to yell at each other when I address the adults as kids. Can we all act our age and I'll get you both out of here as soon as I can? To which Parent 2 looks me dead in the eye and says she started it. I responded incredulously, how old are you? Thankfully that shut them both up and the kids picked their prizes. Story 15. I used to work security. At the gate we had a very simple rule. No outside food or beverages except for sealed plastic water bottles. You could bring in empty bottles to refill inside of the park, but anything other than a brand new water bottle was forbidden. Problem was, people would sell drinks out of coolers like 50 feet from the entrance, so people would buy sodas and stuff, then be forced to dump them. The number of times I had to get into a shouting match with a grown adult about not being able to bring their sugar water was insane. Watching them act all defiant and chugging their drinks like they were proving a point to me was the most fun. I don't care what you do with it, as long as it doesn't come in the park. The other funny thing was watching grown adults dump their water into a trash can instead of the grass or one of the many trees around. Once you tell them they have to dump it, it ceases to be water for some reason and registers as trash. For people who interview potential candidates for high-level positions, what was the worst interview you conducted? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. She only spoke in high-end corporate speak and non-answers. I didn't have any clue about her as a person leaving that interview, but could tell she was the absolute wrong fit. Of course she was hired and has tanked that program. That corporate speak is still a thing and still works on the corporate suits is sad and baffling to me. I guess if you are a person with no substance beyond your ability to babble a lot of corporate speak to sound more knowledgeable than you are, then you would want to surround yourself with more people like this. So no one would call you out on your crap. I think that's how people like these get these jobs and still keep them. Once you enter management, your actual competency stops mattering, and it's more about kissing the right ass and saying the right things in meetings to pretend like you matter. Story 2. I interviewed a guy for a head of marketing position many years ago. This guy shows up to the interview and is immediately smug as crap. We haven't even started yet. He refuses to turn on his camera, instantly remarks how he worked for Facebook, and let it be known that he's the real deal. I ask him, what are the channels for video game marketing? And he responded with, I don't know, does it matter? Astonished, we asked him how he would approach marketing different platforms, and he responded, with lots of money. I asked him if he realized we were an indie company, and he was like, that doesn't matter. Halfway through the interview, the CEO himself finally begged me to stop the interview. We contacted our recruiting firm and told them he was the single worst candidate we had ever encountered. They dropped him as a client because apparently this wasn't even the first time he was a terrible interview. I still remember his name. He ended up going back to Facebook. Seemed like he tested the market, realized he wasn't crap, and then went back home where he could blend in as a useless Nepo baby. Story 3. Everyone I've ever worked with who was formerly Facebook before the tech layoffs were the most incompetent and disingenuous people. We all hated having to collaborate with them because the Facebook way of doing things is so unrealistic and myopic outside of Facebook. They bled us dry with idiotic product ideas and stunts to where layoffs occurred. They were only hired because of their connections and how our HR began to focus on hiring upper management's buddies over actually skilled people. After I was laid off, I got desperate enough to go work for Meta, but quickly off out of there because it was worse than I ever could have thought for someone like me. The level of corporate there and difference of job expectations and reality put a pit in my stomach every day I was there. Nightmare organization. Story 4. I interviewed a guy for a higher level management position for the company I worked for. Attire was supposed to be business professional. He showed up in a Hawaiian shirt, jeans, and flip-flops because he thought this interview was just a formality, and he believed his supposed reputation in the industry just preceded him. I had no idea who he was. When he realized we were actually asking questions, he just said, "Trust me, I'm the guy for the job," over and over and over again. It became a running joke for all of us when we'd get a new assignment. Story 5. I was chair of a committee to screen a new library director. The candidate came in and was dismissive of me from the beginning. It was as if she was insulted that a lowly librarian was interviewing her instead of a dean or provost. Then during the interview, she asked a question which I was answering. She interrupted me, told me I wasn't answering her question correctly, and then proceeded to explain my library to me. The faces of the rest of the committee were hilarious to watch. They gave up on poker faces and just let their true opinions show. Several just put their pens down and just went through the motions with the rest of the interview. I'm not sure she was savvy enough to notice. A candidate friend of mine was interviewing a candidate for a customer-facing managerial position, public university, think head of department kind of role. This woman was adamant about being the opposite of a people person, said she prefers to work alone. The position is basically half delegation and the other half is collaboration, and said her biggest weakness was trying to relate to those who reported to her. She didn't elaborate, and didn't seem to understand that she was giving the literal worst answers possible at every point. The most awkward part was the fact that when no one was hired for the role, they reposted the job listing, and that woman applied again, and they were required by law to interview her again. The candidate was made aware that no one interviewed was deemed a good fit. Her answers did not change. Story 7. Senior engineer role, in person right before the pandemic. Guy kept steering all his answers to technical questions back to the time he'd spent with Peace Corps. After the third time, I just let him ramble. When we were done, I offered to toss his empty cup and he was weirdly protective of it, like insisted it was too much trouble and I could just show him the kitchen on the way out. Sure, whatever. Guy washes his paper cup before throwing it out and leaves. In our follow-up meeting to discuss the candidate, our director was pissed because the guy wouldn't stay on topic, and if he didn't know any better, he'd think the candidate was drunk. And then it clicked as to why he'd been so odd with the cup. We did not make an offer. Story 8. I'm a senior engineer at our firm and often sit in on interviews to gauge technical prowess. We had some kid come in fresh out of college, and it was evident he read or was given some advice to come off demanding. The "if you know exactly what you want, people will respect you" type of thing. It was almost comical. He came in and said things like, "Look, we all know the back and forth. The bottom line is I'll help progress this business and take you in new directions." He was also saying things like, "I'll need you to stock Pete's dark roast coffee in the kitchen. I like my lunchtime around 2 p.m. I need vacation time available immediately." Mr. Confidence turned into Mr. Confidently rejected on the spot. At one point, my boss even asked, "Are you always like this or are you just nervous?" Laugh out loud, I never saw a face sink like that so fast. We even gave him pointers to tone it down, or he's going to have a really hard time out there. Story 9. I asked an engineer, "What do you love about engineering?" And they paused for a long moment and then told me they didn't love anything about it. I panicked and tried to save it for them and said, "Oh, what about the team you're on right now?" And they said, "Oh, my team is great. But I don't think I want to be a software engineer anymore. I don't think I like it at all." At this point, the interview was dead, and we had a policy not to end early. So I asked them, "What's something you do love?" And we talked about knitting for 45 minutes. It was really fun. They didn't get the job. Story 10. Not me, but my mother. Interviewed a guy for their chief safety and security position. They asked why he was leaving his last job after 15 plus years. He responds completely seriously that he was actually forced to resign shortly after he sent in his resume because he neglected a final security check at his facility, which resulted in a fire. They asked for more details and learned that his negligence led to a loss of over $2 million for his former employer. And because no one was hurt, they made a deal that he would resign and forfeit his severance package to boot. When they asked why they should hire him, considering that information, he replied that it was just one mistake, so they shouldn't take it so seriously. Story 11. Some folks just have a certain aura that keeps them in jobs. The director at my last job, I hate her. It's not just me, a bunch of people do, and I'm pretty sure one of the VPs knows a bunch of folks hate her. Her conversations can get very inappropriate at times, not like sexual, but financially inappropriate, like talking about people's salaries. But the CEO loves her, so she's safe. Not only that, she started to fill her department with her people from a prior job who she hangs with outside work. The workers themselves are mostly fine, but the director sucks. The time given little to his knowledge was way too small to what he had to do. Just as he started to figure out, they fired him because he was taking too long. All the actual engineers felt he wasn't given enough time to catch up and get in rhythm, and some felt he was scapegoated by the director because she overpromised and couldn't deliver. Funny enough, another engineer she had was at odds with, who was liked by others, also fired. There was a theory going around that she was firing people to fill their role with people from her previous job to get better control of her current seat. I left. Last I heard, she's vying for a VP spot, even though people who left complained about her as we left. Story 12. I once set up an interview with someone for a lead position at a company I've since left. Right from the start, they sent me a snarky email saying, "If you're going to post a job, at least make sure the people you mention actually work there." I was confused, so I asked them to clarify. They responded, claiming the name of the company's founder-director listed in the ad wasn't accurate, and that no one went by that name in the list of employees on the website. Fast forward a few days to the interviews, and we are conducting the initial rounds via Zoom. The candidate from the email tried to join the meeting 45 minutes before their scheduled time while I was interviewing another candidate, so I declined their request to enter and intended on giving them a call once finished to see if something happened they needed to meet earlier. Before the other interview even ended, I received a rambling email where they berated me for not letting them in early and threatened to report me to company director's name. I simply replied, "We don't have anyone by that name working here," and then blocked them. Story 13. I was hiring for a role, and someone reached out to me via LinkedIn to let me know they'd applied. Totally fine. It turns out he was the son of a former coworker, which was interesting to know, but not really relevant to the hiring process. I reviewed his resume, but unfortunately, he didn't have the experience needed for the role. His background was in completely different industries. Since I used to work with his mom, I gave him that feedback, and he was totally understanding. His mother, my former coworker, then reached out to me, pleading her son's case. She even said she'd personally fill in any gaps in his knowledge and coach him through the role, insisting that I give him a chance. Two big problems with this. Having your mom reach out like this makes it seem like you can't stand on your own in the workplace. His mom and I now work for direct competitors. There's proprietary information involved, and she would potentially have access to it. That's a major conflict. Bottom line, don't have your mom reach out for you in a job application, and definitely don't bring her with you. Story 14. I interviewed this candidate for a startup. Every time he didn't know how to answer a question about his previous experience, he'd claim he couldn't because of an NDA. I gave him the benefit of the doubt until he finally admitted that he had put something on his resume just so that he gets calls from recruiters. But this wasn't even the worst part. At the very end, he thanked me for my time and then said, "I hope to work here at X." X was not my company's name. It's not like he mixed us up with some other company. He got it wrong. And I corrected him, and he just casually said, "Oh, that's what you're called?" So it wasn't a genuine slip of the tongue either. We didn't really have a policy for ending an interview early when there's no hope at all, so that was a colossal waste of my precious time. Story 15. Not me, but my mom was part of the interview of some high-up position in the company she worked for. She said this one woman came in and didn't seem nervous or anything and did fine in the interview. Not particularly good, but fine. Then when they walked her out and came back to discuss their notes of her, someone noticed a weird smell. Turns out her chair was soaked with pee. She just pissed all over the chair onto the carpet below, but because of the layout of the room, no one noticed. She was wearing a black dress, so no one noticed when she walked out by looking at her. She could have easily asked to use the bathroom, but didn't. They had to throw out the chair and get the carpet professionally cleaned. She did not get the job. What's stressing you out right now? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Losing my youth. That's just vitality. Often youth is much more than just your physical being. I have a difficult time with how fast culture shifts. It feels too fast for me to keep up with, and it's weary to live in a world that you increasingly can't easily interact with. You're only worth something if you're young, or trying to be young, when you are often ridiculed mercilessly for it. I'm not trying to be young, so I feel forsaken. It's not stressing me out per se, but I can see how it could. Story 2. My job. Every day I hope a meteor hits, or the zombie apocalypse, or anything to destroy capitalism, all so I won't have to endure working at the place I do. In the same boat, already struggling, I can't leave as I have to support my family. Trying to find a new job for 2 years now, but higher paying positions all go to people being recommended by people who work there. Can't afford to start at the bottom again, and I have a master's degree, so it's not that I'm not qualified. If I could just stop working but still somehow pay my bills, I'd have nearly zero anxiety in my life. Feels like work is the foundation for all of my stress. Restricts time, restricts sleep, restricts life. Story 3. Wanting to get divorced, can't afford to leave, don't know how or where to start. I got divorced after 30 years and rented a room with a shared bathroom, kitchen, and laundry. It was kind of rough, but infinitely better than a bad marriage. Now I'm in another relationship out of state and I truly can't live on my own now, and it has me so depressed. I make less now than I did 8 years ago. I'm paying off debt and will share another house if I have to, but having a plan helps relieve my stress. Had an acquaintance who wanted to divorce his wife and changed his mind after a divorce lawyer told him what he will end up losing. He lives in a community property state and didn't think about having a prenup. Story 4. Planning my wedding and how expensive it is. I kinda agree with my girl that when the time comes, we will have a small wedding and use the money on some big expensive honeymoon. Why? Waste money on feeding the family I barely see when we can create memories for us. Don't forget, it's not about money, it's about being together. I had a wedding of around 200 lots of family and friends. We had everyone do potluck and had the reception at a rented fire hall. I printed the invitations on my printer. I did get nice paper and envelopes. Everyone had a blast. Expensive, lavish weddings are unnecessary and basically just the wedding industry profiting. Story 5. Rent prices. 1 to 2 years ago, it was £750 for a one-bedroom. Now it's £900 to £1,000. Landlords are taking advantage of the fact that the UK is overpopulated. I make good money, but I don't want to be paying more than half my wage on rent and bills FFS. I really don't understand this. 10 years ago, after a breakup, I temporarily rented out a room in a lovely apartment. I rented it out for £450, but it was essentially them having their own room and bathroom. Nobody in bedroom 3, and very much a shared vibe. When I looked the other month, people in the same area are charging £800 for similar, which blows my mind. Story 6. The neglect of working people. Tried to apply for this little one-bedroom attic converted flat. It was £950, absolutely bending over. The letting agent said the landlord said he will proceed if I make an offer of more. I said no, the price is more than adequate. They got back to me and said, the landlord has said if you are willing to up the price to £960 he would proceed. I don't care that it's only £2,500 per week more. It's high enough. Bending over already. In work 12-hour shifts and can't even find a decent one-bedroom flat to rent. UK is done. I can see why people would say dank this and why they are tempted to go on benefits and add to the chaos. Story 7. The lobbyist funded the kleptocracy that makes our entire ruling class. All of the misery that causes my life, and how in spite of that I am legitimately privileged. I have it way easier than others. And all I see are efforts to fracture the community in a bid to prevent collective action. Only they've gone on so long, the rot infects people who turn on their own for being different. Oh, and I've not seen anywhere near as many bugs or birds this summer, and I don't know why. Story 8. My professional and personal life. I want to study and improve professionally, but I'm financially incapable to do that right now. It's frustrating because I know I have the skills but couldn't get a promotion simply because I only have a bachelor's degree from a third world country. I feel stuck. I see people higher than me that could barely do the job earn twice as much. My personal life sucks too. I'm stressed that I'm going to grow old single. I'm already 26. I'm stressed that my value is declining and my biological clock is ticking. I've made a bucket list before, but it's been a year and I haven't done anything because I don't have the money. I'm still helping my family financially, so I don't have much funds. Story 9. Need to finish college before I turn 30 as my ESA has to be liquidated by then, so I'm told. I hate the stupid degree path I was bullied into, and it's taken me 4 years to get 2/3 of the way through an associate's basics for a bachelor's. I have 8 classes left for the degree and I hate every second of it. My advisor advised me to just do it anyways, because what matters is showing employers you can do hard things, which I sort of understand. But I am terrible at this subject and the advice is to do it anyways? Anywho, that one kept me up tonight and is probably contributing to my eyebrow furrow. I want to live in the mountains. Story 10. I'm waiting to hear back from a company that I've applied to. Last Friday was my 3rd interview with them, and so far I feel like things are going well, but I'd be devastated if I went through all that stress of interviews and still not get the job. Plus, it's going to be my first time photographing for a wedding tomorrow. The bride is my friend's sister. They hired more professional photographers and videographers, but their mom asked me to take photos focusing on them as a family. I'm flattered that she's impressed with my photo portfolio, but since it's my first time doing a wedding event, yeah, I'm getting some chest aches from all this stress, but nothing major so far. Still, I think I should go see a doctor sometime soon, LOL. Story 11. My partner lost her job 18 months ago. She has 16 years experience in marketing. She has applied to 268 jobs, has only gotten 14 interviews, and none of those have resulted in a job. To add to this, my company restructured last year after the former CEO took his money and ran. Of course, they did the usual, brought in consultants, reorganized half the departments and teams, promised no layoffs for that first year. So, as you can probably guess, I've now been a casualty of those not first-year layoffs. Usual BS, not a culture fit, performance, which wouldn't be an issue if I hadn't worked there for 5 years and outlasted 2 managers and received service awards almost every year I've worked there. But the new manager really didn't like me, I guess, because he not only pinned our department's poor numbers on me, our numbers had been down for over 6 months, he also blocked my move to another department and put a gag order as a requirement for my severance, meaning, if I say anything to my former colleagues, I cannot receive my severance. Given all this and what my partner has been through in the job market, I'm very worried. I have no family safety net, we have 2 children, we just bought a house 3 years ago. It drained our savings not just in cost, but also maintenance and repairs. On top of this, I have a daughter from a previous marriage that I pay for her special schooling and medical needs. I'm scared, I'm depressed, and I'm definitely stressed. Story 12. Lost my job back in May. My wife lost her job the prior August due to medical reasons and filed for disability on advice of pretty much everyone that talked to her. I recently found a new job, but now we're facing the situation of our landlord wanting us out of the house we're renting because he thinks he can add a few upgrades and rent it for much more money. So, after living in rented houses for the past 10 years or so with my wife, we're trying to move into an apartment. Last Friday, I just got my second paycheck, and they require at least 2 pay stubs. They then asked for my wife's verification of income, which is nothing. As we've been waiting over 6 months now for disability to make a determination, but they say this will hopefully happen by the end of this month. In the meantime, I sold anything on eBay that I thought would pull in some money. I sold all my autographed Ed and Lorraine Warren stuff. Any super rare stuff like the Recalled box set, rare comics books. I think I pulled in a few thousand doing that. But that still wasn't enough. Not by a long shot. And that's with unemployment. I've ended up having to reach out to my father for financial assistance, and he just recently retired, and I know he doesn't have much. So right now, we're actively stressing about what next month brings. We haven't been accepted into the new apartment yet. We paid the application fee and the $200 to hold the apartment. And then there's the cost of the movie itself. Hiring workers to do the heavy lifting. I've not been this overwhelmed in a long time. Story 13. To be honest, where do I start? I have no idea. Because I've been going through so much already that I've been so focused on moving on to get through life that I never took the chance to even give myself time to grief or even embrace situations myself, however, such as life. At the end of the day, I will proceed to keep going on to everyone reading this. I am genuinely sorry for whatever you're going through, but please, from the bottom of my heart, don't give up. I know life is hard, life is hectic, but this is your story. We can learn from whatever we're going through to better yourself, only if you're willing to. I have this saying, it goes, no matter how hard I try, I fall, yet no matter how hard I fall, I still try. Life is a bigger picture, and we are all pieces of a puzzle. So please, no matter what you're going through, please keep trying and or reach out to others. You are not alone, maybe in person, but in spirit. There are millions of people going through their own battles. Sometimes we gotta look outside of ourselves to understand. So whatever you're going through, please keep trying to whom it may concern. Just know I'm not just talking to you, but also to myself as well. So please stay beautiful. This world is cruel already. Don't ever lose yourself. Continue to be who you are. Learn, but stay beautiful. Story 14. I currently work for the USPS as a city carrier. We have been working without a contract for 16 months now, which means that we haven't gotten a raise or a cost of living adjustment. And our union president has been gaslighting us that we should be getting a temporary agreement soon. That was 9 months ago. Then a little over a month ago, he said that they were just hours away, but that all of the financial stuff had been solidified and that they were working on some contract stuff. Then this week, he was telling a group of carriers that the financials are what is holding things up. He can't keep his lies straight. We are not allowed to strike, so we are just dangling in the wind. It is incredibly frustrating and stressful. Story 15. My upcoming wisdom teeth surgery. My teeth on my lower yawn are laying literally horizontal, close to the nerve, and my doctor said they cannot put me to sleep. They are going to remove my teeth piece by piece so they are less likely to damage the nerves. But I am still so scared, considering how sometimes the stuff that numbs the area before surgery does not help if it does not reach. And my mom does not allow me to opt out of the surgery to search for another doc that would put me to sleep because she has already paid €200 for the 3D scanner they have analyzed my teeth with and tells me to suck it up. While I do understand her, it was money. I somewhat cannot trust my doctor with this. They have already pushed my appointment 3 times earlier by an hour than intended. I don't know if it's a good sign. They do have 5 stars, but I don't know. It doesn't often mean much. At what point in the wedding did you think the bride and groom would not be husband and wife for long? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. She was clearly in love with him. He was very clearly gay. Neither seemed to want to recognize it, but everyone else was sure of it. A few years later, turns out he's gay and wants a divorce. Poor Alan Turing was very close to marrying a woman who worked with him. Watching her interview was touching as they were best friends. They backed out of the engagement because he confessed to her he had no attraction to women, even one he loved like her. Watching her talk about him in those interviews, you saw her face light up brightly. She talked about how handsome, sweet, and caring he was. You can see she still loved him long after his tragic end. Story 2. Had a neighbor who got arrested the night before his wedding in a bar fight. Then, the night of the wedding, walking back to the hotel with his new wife, decided he really needed pizza, so he tried to walk into a local pizza place. It was closed, so he kicked in the door and kept walking. Got arrested 2 blocks down the street, so she spent the night before and the night of her wedding alone and crying. When they told me this story, they were in the process of trying to get pregnant and have since had a kid. They got divorced very recently to absolutely no one's surprise. Story 3. I was a +1 at a wedding last year. By the evening, the bride was so drunk she asked me to help her pee in her dress. I didn't know her, but being a gal's gal, I assisted. I made small talk whilst she peed and asked if she was having fun, etc. She went into a weird trance and said, "When I walked down the aisle, I was really disappointed that the groomsman I shagged a month ago didn't turn up." I don't think she realized she said it out loud. Anyway, the marriage lasted 9 months. Story 4. The groom immediately downed a full glass of vodka as soon as they did the entrance. He was staggering, stumbling, weeping the whole time, and she basically had a reception alone. This was September. By Halloween, he was gone living in another state with a woman he met 2 weeks before the wedding. They had been together for 7 years. This week would have been their 27th wedding anniversary. He did come back for his belongings a few months later and told her he got so drunk out of guilt and he was too scared to call the wedding that she paid for off. I remember it so well because it was the first wedding I ever attended and the ceremony was just beautiful, and we, her co-workers, were all in tears about how we all wanted this for ourselves. Then the reception happened and we were all like, no thanks. She was never the same after that. Story 5. Bride and groom had been together for years, and she was hopelessly in love with him, and he treated her like dirt. This went on for years with her begging him to get married. Finally, one day he proposed. I think he said something romantic like, "If it'll shut you up, let's get married." I was friends with a girl who was friends with the bride, and went as her +1 to the wedding, which was held on Super Bowl Sunday. Early into the reception, the groom and his groomsmen left the party to go to a bar to watch the game. His parting words to the bride were, "You know I love you, baby, but I've got $10 on the game." They lasted nearly a year before she got tired of him cheating on her, and she finally left him. Story 6. When my ex-best friend was bragging while we were getting ready for the ceremony about sleeping with other men. She said they had an understanding when I asked if he specifically knew about it. She said he doesn't need to know, I'm all for people having whatever type of relationship they want. But don't make me complicit in your cheating. Sounds like the understanding was, don't ask, don't tell, don't ask if I'm cheating on you because I don't want to tell you that I am. It was so weird and they divorced a few years later. I actually unfriended her shortly after. Story 7. When I walked into the cocktail hour reception, said hello to an old friend from college. And he said, "So I was thinking about writing out the check I brought as a gift right to their divorce attorney." And I laughed and said, "I asked my wife if we really had to bring a gift because we both know this marriage won't last." Still trying to figure out how everyone except the bride and groom knew their marriage was a bad idea. Story 8. True story, I am the sister of the bride that day. My sister and groom, her ex-husband, were in the venue after the church ceremony, and at some point I noticed that he is not there. I saw my sister looking for him and asked me to look with her. We checked everywhere, and I remembered that we didn't check the parking. I was thinking that maybe he is in the car looking for something. Surprise, surprise, he was our cousin in the car. Car was literally shaking, and we knocked on the car window, and my sister screamed, threw the ring at him, and slapped our cousin in the face and ran away. From that day, which was 2 years ago, she still didn't come to visit me or our family, and also our cousin went to live abroad with my sister's ex-husband. So yeah, I would say if you are getting married and notice that the bride or groom are nowhere to be found, They are probably doing something wrong, and save your life from misery and go take a look. Story 9. At the hour-and-a-half mark of the wedding. The wedding was 2.5 hours total. They included everything: unity sand, unity candles, poetry, songs, exchanging vows, rope on hands. I don't think they left anything out. They also spent an absolute fortune on the wedding. Something in me just knew it wouldn't last. She ended up cheating on him. He was a really great guy, and pretended to leave the guy and go to couples counseling for a year before calling it quits. Her family all knew about the affair and no one told him. She lost her job because she worked at a Christian school that wouldn't support her cheating when it all came out. She's still with the guy and married him. I have no faith that the relationship will last either. Story 10. Ran into one of the bride's new in-laws in the bathroom during the reception, and the in-law looked methed up. Had to wonder if she knew what she was marrying into. Father of the bride drove me back to the train station the following day, and he expressed some misgivings about his daughter's choice of mate, but was trying his best to be supportive. We girls were 19 and 20 at the time, and I only had ever seen my overbearing parents freak out over my choice of boyfriends. Seeing a normal family expressing those kinds of concerns was an eye-opener for me. Like, this is what real worry looks like. They lasted 2 years, I think. Story 11. When the bride's work friend was having a slow dance with her at the reception and feeling her arse up in front of the groom, family, and friends. She left the groom the day they got back from their honeymoon. And she kept all the presents. Man, that reminds me of one I went to. Girl was 24 and husband was 38. They'd been together 5 years. We thought it was kind of creepy at first, but they seemed to be happy. At the wedding, her younger sister, who was 17 and was just about to go to college, gave a toast about how she wished she could have a relationship like theirs, and a husband like him when she grows up. Husband had known this girl since she was 12. Anyway, long story short, he did a nice slow dance with her, then another, and was ignoring his wife and everyone else. At one point I looked over and he's got his hand inside the back of her low-cut bridesmaid dress and is rubbing her ass. She's got her eyes closed and her face is buried in his neck. People had tried to break them up, to say something. People started leaving the wedding. Bride is crying outside. Her parents are furious. Anyway, they got the marriage annulled, and he dated her sister. Whole family went no contact with the sister. She dropped out of college to stay in town and work and live with him. He was with her for a while, then dumped her for another high school girl a few years later. Last I heard, he had been arrested and charged with statutory rape, but somehow got it dismissed. Then moved to Alaska to do whatever. Story 12. My husband's side of the family is a goldmine for wedding drama. One guy married super young, basically because he got his girlfriend pregnant and it was very obvious that his in-laws were forcing the marriage. One guy married a foreign girl he met at a study abroad program in Russia at the courthouse. No fancy dinner, no nothing to celebrate, and had no idea how she could be so heartless to divorce him after she got citizenship. One guy made out with another woman on the dance floor during the later part of the reception. The only wedding I've been to that had to be stopped mid-service by the speak now or forever hold your peace clause was when the bride's estranged father stood up, who had not walked her down the aisle because he was not much a part of her life, and stated, "Father Pastor, I'm real sorry about doing this now, but I just recognized where I think I've seen groom's mama before, and I'm real sorry, father of the groom, because it seems you didn't know. But I think you might be my son, so if I were you, I'd get some blood work before going on with this here marriage." Turns out the man was right. They were half-siblings and didn't know it. Called the wedding off, stopped the romantic relationship, and are now happily married to other people, but still hang out and invite each other's families to family get-togethers. Story 13. Does the reception count? The girl has dated my brother on and off for years. She cheated on him with a lot of guys, including the guy she was marrying, who broke into their place and smashed a bunch of his stuff once. At the reception, he hit the booze hard. We all did. She came over and I said I always thought she was going to be my sister-in-law. She said she thought so too, but no one stopped the wedding. Then my friend Philip, who was crap-faced, accidentally bumped into a child and the dad punched him. He confusingly got into his Jeep and drove off. The bride, who had a fling with him, once started crying her head off. That's when her new mother-in-law came over and said that her new husband was vomiting in the bathroom and that she needed to take care of it because that's her job now. The cake was good. I met her outside of a Walmart a few years later and she was pregnant. I asked her about the guy and she said she had gotten divorced and remarried and was thinking about getting divorced again. Story 14. When his dad was taking bets on how long the marriage would last with us, the groomsmen. He won the bet at 9 to 12 months. She was bipolar and decided to stop taking her meds without telling anyone. She attached him in his sleep with a baseball bat because he was congested and snoring. She thought he was a monster. She broke his arm and 4 of his ribs. 2 weeks after this incident, she smacked his hand with a meat hammer while they were making dinner to what would happen. She refused to take her meds and he left. She now has 7 children with 4 different guys. She is ridiculously hot still to this day, so guys fall for her crap and then bail when they find out how crazy she is. Story 15. I was the best man at a wedding of a close friend 10 years ago. Leading up to the big day, it became pretty clear for everyone that knew him it was a mistake. Him and I had a set schedule where we both had 1 weekend off together a month, think 24/7's factory schedules. The bachelor party at the last minute got moved like 2 weeks, and he told me. Steph said this was the best time for me to do it. It essentially was so nobody could attend or put anything meaningful together. Wedding rehearsal became apparent that the bride's main concern was doing what her best friend suggested, and including her 11-year-old son from a previous relationship. Wedding comes and bride and her whole family are basically treating the groomsmen like we are butlers. Guys in tuxedos basically working like we were a chain gang in orange coveralls. Big Mormon family with about 8 brothers in jeans that couldn't be messed to set out a folding chair in the field the wedding was taking place. At the wedding reception, the bride's large family sat off by themselves and didn't interact with anyone. At a certain point, they stood up and basically started kicking people out, saying it was time to clean. I, along with everyone else on the groom's side, had no idea about this. The bride basically didn't say a word to anyone on the groom's side through the rehearsal all the way to the reception. When her family started ushering people out, I was at the bar with the groom. Bride tossed me a broom and said, "Thanks for coming, now start cleaning up." I just laughed and went to collect my wife and another friend who was catching a ride with us. The other friend asked in the parking lot if we should feel bad about not staying clean. I said, "Nah, I'll stick around after the next one because there is no chance this is gonna last." I think it was about 16 months to the day that she changed the locks and had him served papers. She basically used him to be able to afford her white trash dream house they bought together. College students, who was that roommate from and for what reason? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. She wasn't the worst, but she had some pretty gross habits. There was one time she was waxing her crotch with those wax strips, and after she ripped one off, it fell face down on the floor in the room. The rest of the semester had dried wax glue and pube hair on the floor. She refused to clean it. I had a roommate wax himself on my futon, didn't clean it even though there was wax and hair everywhere. And then came back and said, "Is there anything else you want to talk about since this was just such a big deal?" with a random grinder hookup behind him. Story 2. Had a roommate who got diagnosed with colon cancer partway through the year. It was a roller coaster of emotions as his treatment progressed throughout the school year. I supported him as much as I could and couldn't believe he chose to stay enrolled and on campus through it all. At the end of the school year, he broke the news to me. His cancer was terminal, and he didn't have much time left. We said goodbye as we left for the summer, me thinking it was the last time I'd probably ever see him. The next year, he was around campus again. Turns out he made it all up, never had cancer. Story 3. Had a friend who also made up cancer. I let her move in with me so she could do chemo. She faked visits, being ill, hospital stays, her hair falling out, and finally she broke the news she was terminal. I'm not sure what the end game here was. I think she just had borderline personality disorder and didn't want to work. I supported her for a year. When I found out it was all a lie, I told her to leave. She made me evict her. Attorney said she could drag it out over a year. He encouraged me to offer her cash for keys, so I paid her $1,000 to move out. She demanded $5,000. I thought I'd felt every emotion available in this world, but in that moment, I was overcome with a murderous rage. I legit would have killed her if my friend wasn't there to run interference. Story 4. She drank watermelon sourpuss liquor 24/7, dripping it everywhere, making all surfaces sticky and sickly sweet-smelling. She would be up until 1-2 a.m., blaring Eminem on her stereo. Never would turn the lights off on her side, so I had to get used to sleeping in a bright room. And would make about 6 kg macaroni cups a day in my microwave, any time of day or night. She would mess a different guy every week. No notice, I was always home. She'd just say, "Oh, haha, sorry, I thought you were fast asleep." One night, I was woken up around 3 a.m. by someone shaking my leg. The boy of the night was standing over me with a sheet barely covering his naked junk, and he's trapped in a pair of handcuffs. "Hey, do you know where she keeps the keys? I need to go." I did not. He stumbled back to her side, woke her up, they messed again, and he finally left, sans handcuffs. Thank every god ever that she dropped out after Christmas. Story 5. Not roommate, but more of a floor mate. Had this one gal that was really friendly with everyone on the floor, boys and girls. She was always in someone's room hanging out and would eventually go to someone else's room to hang out. Did this routinely every day after classes. Welp, turned out she was the resident closet junkie and would go to everyone's room being really friendly to steal all their crap. Watches, jewelry, wallets, laptop, anything worth money. Everyone found out after a midterm party when she was out in the parking completely blasted on whatever she was taking. She got arrested and expelled, and when it came time to clear out her room, that's when everyone's stolen crap started popping up. Story 6. Roommate as a freshman was very clearly super-duper sheltered his whole life and had no clue how to function independently. I and the guys on my floor noticed after about a week that he started to smell. A couple of us approached him as gently as possible to ask if he had deodorant. He quickly said yes, then whipped out the still unopened free sample of soap that was in the welcome packs the RA had prepared. So that showed that not only did he not know what deodorant was, he also didn't know what soap was. We kind of took him under our collective wings and started to teach him general life skills like that. He was making lots of progress. Then one night I woke up and he was sitting next to my bed staring at me. I asked what he was doing and he said every night he just liked to sit and watch me sleep. That was the end of that. I requested a new roommate pretty damn fast. Story 7. Had a doormate who didn't shower, not great, but we didn't share rooms. One day she sat down next to me, didn't ask, and without a word, unfurled a plastic bag of loose pills. Took a handful and then acted like I insulted her. The first week of the semester, she told us it's her birthday, so we went and got a cake for her and put up streamers. She walked in, took them all down, and yelled at us for thinking she wanted to celebrate it. Knocked on my door in the middle of the night and told me her mother killed herself when she was a child, but wanted me to know. She threatened my roommate with her knife collection because she was watching TV in her room and any noise made her want to kill my roommate and herself. The knives were the final straw. She got moved to another room where she threw a frying pan at her new roommate. I Google her name just to see if she's in jail. Not yet. Story 8. Not a roommate, but a floormate's. This person was absolutely brilliant, like doing grad research at one of the largest research universities in the world during their freshman year. Brilliant. The thing is, they had no concept of hygiene. Would not shower for months on end. It was nauseating. Never went to class. Was somehow still getting a 4. He never showered or brushed his teeth. Barely left the room. Played some Pirates-themed MMORPG online all the time and ate nothing but canned food and maybe some fruit. He moved out before I did, and had to clean his side of the room. The wall behind his desk and bed were absolutely ungodly disgusting. Also, he never used bed sheets. Slept straight on the mattress. Story 9. Many nights she would wake me up by watching kiddie shows like Lazy Town at full volume and weeping loudly in her bed as she crunched on chips. Because she was homesick. She lived 30 minutes away and could have commuted instead of dorming. Towards the end of the year, her boyfriend was pledging a frat, and on the last night they made him run some sort of obstacle course and covered him in. Things like flour and hot sauce. She told me he would be coming to sleep over because he was finally finished pledging, and I agreed. He showed up as I was falling asleep, sweaty and covered in smelly food. He said he was going to take a shower and disappeared, so I fell asleep. I woke up about an hour later from the sounds and the god-awful stench of them, and he had not showered. They fell asleep and he never showered that night. I didn't speak to her for the rest of the year, only a couple of weeks luckily, or ever again after that. Story 10. Well, when we moved into the apartment-style dorm in the fall, he'd been there all summer doing summer classes. His food in the fridge and pantry were literally rotting. He wasn't there to help, so my friend and I spent a while just getting the cleaning done ourselves. Now when I say rotting, I mean with actual maggots and whatnot. Just nasty stuff. It wasn't our job, but we were gonna have to live there, so we scrubbed it all with bleach and made damn sure the place was clean. Later that day, he came back and cussed us out for us having thrown away all his food. That was just the first day. It didn't get any better the whole semester, after which he moved off campus. Story 11. He was a right-wing political conspiracy theories and fitness TikToker, spiritual guru, and unlicensed chiropractor. Very sexist, and generally willing to take advantage of people. He happily bragged to me once about having multiple long-distance girlfriends. One of them visited once, and they screwed non-stop for a week. Repeatedly woke everyone up in the middle of the night. His room was also disgusting. He used one of my bowls as a bedside tissue bin, let rice rot in another for a month, used a mattress protector as a curtain, didn't buy bed sheets for 2 months, and cleaned the place once a year. Story 12. My freshman year roommate was luck of the draw. He wasn't terrible to me, but he never took out the trash. He'd just throw it in the closet if I asked him to take it out, and refused. Once he tossed a sausage pizza in the closet, and the whole room stank like meat. I introduced him to our friends and he joined the group. Well, sophomore year he sawed one of the girls and she kept quiet about it. Junior year he thought she told someone, so he gave her a black eye. Then it came out that he was overcharging rent to the other friends, 4 shared a house and keeping the difference. So he wasn't terrible to me as a roommate, but I'd definitely count that as a roommate from hell. Story 13. She was religious and didn't think animals had souls or any kind of feelings, and would try to pick arguments about it with me. I volunteered at a school for mentally challenged teens, and she said unbelievable things about them. Like when we were paired up with students for activities, she asked how it was decided who would pair with who, and I said it. Just depended on everyone's personalities. And she goes, "They have personalities? LOL. Oh, and she claimed I smelled I bathed, I swear, and she insisted on these Glade stick-ups I was allergic to but refused to get rid of them. And she ran the heater every day. I would be literally panting in front of a fan. One time I had a bad reaction to hair dye and had to go to the ER. She'd never been to the ER before and asked to go because she was curious. The hospital was trying to figure out how to treat me. I'm on a bed in this South Central Louisiana hospital surrounded by like gunshot victims, and the lady next to me having a miscarriage. And here comes Susan. When will you be done? I have homework. I got a bill that summer from the uni because she took my bed's mattress cover after I left. Story 14. Had a vaguely similar experience with a bathroom issue. The dorms I lived in my freshman year were single occupancy suites, with 2 suites sharing a private bathroom that opened from both sides between them. A little while after my first semester began, I started to notice a sort of puddle forming around the base of the toilet we shared and a foul smell. So I called maintenance to come look at it, thinking the toilet was leaking or some such. Maintenance showed up and gave it a look and told me there was nothing wrong with the toilet, that the puddle was urine and it was from someone literally just urinating down the side of the toilet on the floor. My suite mate was a very large, probably 450 plus LBS man, who mentioned he had autism when we briefly met moving in. Giving him the benefit of the doubt and assuming it was accidental unintentional due to his large size. I knocked on his door from inside the bathroom to keep things private and just calmly asked him to clean up after himself. He immediately became incredibly defensive and started making weird excuses about how it was probably other people even though it was a bathroom that literally nobody but the 2 of us used. He even started blaming his family members. I just said that whoever it was, they were coming from his side, so it's his responsibility to clean it up. He said okay, and I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward a couple hours and I could hear him through both of our doors in hysterics on the phone with someone from his family claiming that I was insulting and threatening him. I was like, WTF? So I knocked on his door again to ask why he was lying and saying that stuff through the door since he didn't open it. This made him even more hysterical, and he said he would harm himself if I called him a liar again. I just noped out of there and got a resident assistant, who rounded up some more RAS and a campus police officer to come talk to him. A few days later, he knocked on my door and apologized and then just disappeared entirely. He didn't just move out of the suite, I never saw him on campus again. It was an incredibly strange experience. Story 15. I shared a dorm apartment with 3 other people. Me, Sarah, Carol, and Daniel, fake names. We all had our own rooms with a bed and a desk and 2 bathrooms shared. Plus, a kitchenette and living space. It was great. It was me, 2 other girls, and a guy. The guy was a little odd. You see, me and Sarah shared a bathroom and Carol and Daniel shared the other. We each provided our personal toiletries and then took turns purchasing toilet paper. Daniel never provided any for his bathroom. Carol asked that he do so because that was the agreement. He waffled and didn't. She ended up taking a roll back and forth between the bathroom and her room because she didn't want to pay for him anymore. So he started to go into her room only when no one else was there and snag it to use. So she started to make sure her room was always locked. So he just showered after every bathroom use, whether we were home or not. He'd go in, and after a few minutes, you'd just hear the shower running for a while, then he'd come out with wet hair and clean. There were definitely weird vibes in general, and I ended up moving home over winter break for many reasons, including my roommates being less than great. What's something that seems normal in your country, but would completely confuse someone from another place? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Here in Sydney, the police regularly deploy drug detection dogs at train stations. They bring them into pubs as well. People visiting from overseas seem genuinely shocked by it, but most people here seem to ignore it. A paramedic I knew told me a story about a copper rushing into the ambo side of the building. This was at Air Wing. They share a chopper with his drug dog in training. Because it had eaten the heroin it was meant to be sniffing. Paramedic Narcan the dog and it was fine, but failed as a drug dog. Next time the paramedic saw the cop, he asked the dog, "Move to the bomb squad now. If he eats one of them, he'll not make the mistake twice." Story 2. In Sweden, it's a common tradition to watch Donald Duck, known as Kalle Anka, in Swedish cartoons on Christmas Eve at 3 p.m. sharp. This isn't just a casual thing, it's a national event. Every year, millions of Swedes gather around their TVs to watch a specific 1958 Disney special called From All of Us to All of You, or Kalle Anka och hans vänner önskar god jul in Swedish, which means Donald Duck and his friends wish you a Merry Christmas. I miss the shared TV experience. For some reason, everyone watched the U.S. women's soccer team win at the Rose Bowl in a shootout. It was all anyone could talk about, and we weren't even soccer knowledgeable yet. Maybe because Brandi Chastain ripped off her jersey. Story 3. Letting babies sleep outside in their prams unattended. We have a Ukrainian family that was leaving their baby in the front yard unattended for naps. Multiple child service calls finally stopped them, but my goodness. To start, we live 1 kilometer from a homeless camp, but there are also bears everywhere, as well as coyotes and the occasional cougar. Considering that I live in the suburbs of a major U.S. city and recently saw the remains of a cat that coyotes ate, that would be monumentally dangerous here. There was some guy tripping balls last Friday while I was in the city. I didn't make eye contact with him, but he still decided to get right in my face to stare at me. He probably would have picked an unattended baby up and walked off with it. Story 4. Asking how are you after greeting someone, and no, you are not supposed to answer this question. Goes like, how are you ping pong? Especially weird when you switch to silence right afterwards. Shop, taxi, store. I know you're not expected to answer how are you, but I made the choice long ago to respond anyway because of crap social norms. I don't just say fine, I'm honest about how I'm feeling at the moment. Sometimes I'll say great, and other times it's horrible or crap. Story 5. Congratulating everyone who is present at a birthday party. Imagine Dutch birthday parties are kind of an extension of that funeral mood. If you are invited to a birthday party, when you arrive at the host's place, you step into the living room where there probably will be a gathering of other invitees sitting on chairs in a circle in the living room. There are probably some snacks on a salon table in the middle of the circle. After first congratulating the birthday person and handing over your gift, you go around the circle shaking hands and congratulating everyone. The host will ask you what you'd like to drink and if you'd like a piece of birthday cake. These items will get handed to you, and then you find a seat in the circle. Eat your cake and have conversations with whoever is sitting near you in the circle. Once you finish your cake, you can also take some of the snacks on the table. The host will get you refills on your drinks until it is time to go home. Story 6. In my country, eating rice with every meal is a must. Recently, I had to explain to my friend the appeal of a rice cooker. She's like, it's easy to make your own rice, but I'm like, okay, but when you eat it with every meal, it's a convenience thing. And she's just like, really? Every meal? Yes, every meal, especially for a big family. Also, one more story. When I was a kid and we'd all talk about what we ate for dinner, I said rice, of course. And my friend was like, oh, I don't really like rice. And I remember being shook, like, what do you mean you don't like rice? Then I had that slow realization that people don't eat rice with every meal. Story 7. Most Irish kids will have grown up fearing being beaten with a wooden spoon. Rarely would have actually been hit with one. But the image of a battle-axe Irish mother with a wooden spoon is culturally significant. Insanely awful public transport. I live in a dormitory town where 95% of the population just live there to commute to the city every day. Said city's last train directly to the town is 6.3 thousand in the evening, and it was only until last year they added another one at 8 p.m., and even that still doesn't run on the weekends. A couple years ago, a Ukrainian girl I worked with briefly said, "Your public transport here is worse than Ukraine and we've got a war going on. It's normal for buses to sometimes just not turn up." Story 8. Just saw a video of this African guy talking to some Chinese kids because they'd never seen a black guy before. They're all wearing bathrobes and chilling in a very cozy, cool-looking space. Lots of confused comments asking where they were. It's a fancy bathhouse. Maybe remember that spa sauna culture isn't everywhere, is it? We have a legit Korean spa where I live, and it's also fun to explain to your friends we're all going to be hanging out butt naked in there. I respect those who are too self-conscious who do so, but I really promise no one gives a crap and you get over being naked so fast. Story 9. Apparently tipping at a restaurant. Geez, I've never known anything but tipping your server. I made decent money waiting tables as a young 20 to 30-something with zero advanced education. It is a physical job, so I had to get out. Leave that for the younger folks. But in the US, we tip 20% of the bill and it seems to work. We always pay taxes on, at the minimum, 8% of sales. I declare more because I thought about the Social Security issues of claiming to not make much money. I had no issues paying taxes. Of course, I got a little untaxed. But tipping your food server seems to freak out the rest of the world. Story 10. We're not the only place in the world that has them, but I found that a lot of people, even some from elsewhere within the US, are shocked and sometimes even freaked out by the vast stretches of open prairie here in the Midwest. If you get far out into the Flint Hills in Kansas, it really does feel like the prairie stretches out infinitely in all directions. I can see how it'd be unnerving to people who aren't used to that kind of landscape, but I think it's quite peaceful. It's especially beautiful in the summer during peak wildflower season. Story 11. It may look like a loose collection of people waiting around for their turn at the moment, but every person in that vestibule knows who was there before them and who came in after them, and will let you know if you try to jump ahead in the queue, even though it's not an actual lineup of people. When ordering coffee, a regular has 1 cream and 1 sugar. A double-double is 2 creams, 2 sugars. You're allowed to have other combos, OBS, but those are the ones with the most standard shorthand. Legend says someone ordered the Gretzky, 9 creams, 9 sugars, but we're pretty sure whoever it was probably died immediately after finishing it, so we'll never know for sure. The time zone math required when you live in a country with 6 contiguous time zones, 2 of which don't exist in the US, and 1 of those is only ahead by 30 minutes. So your entire life you've heard programming announcements like Schitt's Creek on CBC at 8:30 in Newfoundland. Story 12. In my country, you can be a very famous black person in a fancy car on the way to your job, where you are almost worshipped like a hero, and a bunch of cops will have you come out of the car for a speeding ticket, handcuff you, and lay you out on the pavement. Then when some of your teammates stop to say you are on your way to your job, which is only a few blocks away in a stadium that will soon be filled with almost 100,000 people screaming and cheering for you, they will handcuff him too. And when a video of this event is posted on Reddit, it will be quickly removed. Then you go to your job and you make a spectacular touchdown, and it's just another day. Story 13. Having a maple syrup reserve. A federal law specifically stating saying sorry is not a legal admission of guilt. The most lucrative heist in Canada's history was the Maple Reserve. Many millions of dollars in maple syrup were stolen. I just listened to the My Favorite Murder podcast episode about it. The law sounds like a sensible one. I don't know how it is in other countries, but lots of people in Canada will say sorry when something happens, whether it's their fault or not. It can mean anything from "I'm sorry I caused that, did that" to "I'm sorry that happened to you." That's actually a thing in most countries. It just gets talked about in regards to Canada specifically. Liability is based on the circumstance and cannot be changed by one person attempting to take ownership. Story 14. I am a dual citizen, but I was born in Sweden. I can confirm this. The simplest reason is tradition. As to the genesis of it, I don't think there is a singular reason, but one of the main reasons was there weren't that many cartoons available, and Disney as a brand was definitely known. The actual show is a Mickey Mouse show, it's just the Swedish love them some Donald Duck. I do think it's worth noting this may not be as obvious to some that the uniqueness is what Swedish people are watching during this particular holiday, not that they are watching television. It's not as unifying as it is in Sweden, but I went to university in the UK, and they would always show Wallace and Gromit around Christmas time. In the States, they will broadcast several, from Home Alone to Miracle on 34th Street and even Die Hard. But as I mentioned, it's not as cohesive and regimented as it is in Sweden. Also, it's in other Scandinavian countries as well. The OP didn't mention another cartoon that's also pretty big around this time. The one about Carl Bertil Johnson's Story 15, Ireland. Being called mad is a compliment. Potatoes for dinner multiple times a week. Timekeeping. There's generally a 20-minute window after a suggested time. And it's only if they arrive after that a person is considered late. Drinking at 14 isn't legal, but it's so common no one bats an eyelid. By the time you get to 18, which is the legal drinking age, the average teen has already had a few years of experience. It used to be a law that you could order a drink at 15 if you were having it with a meal. Racial slurs are depressingly common, but people will flip the crap out if you use an American slang word. I knew a young guy who fancied himself a hardman because he used the N-word, but he went ballistic if someone said soda or high school. I also once saw a mother go apeshit on her kids on a bus once because they said high school. A lot of extremely young parents because abortion wasn't legalized until 2018 and condom prices are notoriously high in this country. Following on from that, also a lot of kids dropping out of school at 14 to 16 because their families needed to send them out to work and earn money. A lot of working class boys become barbers in particular. General hatred, dislike of religion. The Catholic Church had an insane amount of power in the 20th century, and so many of us associate religion with some kind of dystopian leadership. I used to know a girl who says her school punished people if they didn't know what gospels were said in church that Sunday. Our graduation ceremonies were all religious masses, wearing jerseys everywhere. Our school's non-uniform day was sometimes just a wear your favorite jersey day. When the days get longer, people start saying there's a grand stretch in the evenings. People let their dogs run around in public parks without leashes. If you complain about it or have a problem, you're seen as weird. Your accent determines your social standing. Even if you have Irish parents, if your accent isn't recognizably Irish, you're considered a foreigner. What is something that feels like a cheat code in life, but most people don't realize it? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Listening to understand, not to reply. This is all the vast majority of people need for you to be on their good side. I and most of my male friends are engineers, consultants, or scientists, all very much focused on problem solving. It has taken an embarrassingly long time for most of us to realize that when people, particularly partners, open up about troubles or worries, they want sympathy and understanding, and that is all. Exploring solutions may be a secondary conversation, but that is definitely secondary. Even more, going off in a huff when someone has rejected your solution when they just want a hug makes everything much worse. Story 2. When you mess up, admit your guilt and apologize. People will respect you. Deflecting and passing blame makes you look like crap. Don't be the person who laughs off mistakes and screw-ups lightly then lets others pick up the pieces. Similarly, when you're on the job or in class and somebody asks you a relevant factual question you don't know the answer to, just say, "I'm not sure, so let me look that up." And then look it up and get back to them as soon as possible and be ready to tell them where you looked it up if they ask, which they very well might if they doubt your answer. Don't confidently give an answer you're not certain about or straight out nonsense them just to get the person off your back. Very few people are going to hold it against you for not knowing one fact off the top of your head. Getting a reputation as someone who's unreliable, unhelpful, or comfortably ignorant is a whole other story. Story 3. Honestly, learning how to say no without feeling guilty is like a life cheat code. It saves you so much time, energy, and stress. I tell that to anyone for anything. Work, play, hanging out, drinking, whatever. No means no, zero explanation needed. I don't feel like it. Sounds great to me. I want to snuggle my dog and eat Cheetos. Awesome. Just gonna do nothing. Maybe read, maybe not. Cool. Enjoy the downtime. There doesn't need to be any reason. If you want to lie and say your grandma died again, it's fine. But you don't have to lie. Take a mental health day. Take a day to hang out with a friend that is in town. Just take a day. We got this. Obviously, if it's all the time, I'll think it's me and ask how I can make things better. Or if you're doing okay. But most of the time, take a day. I don't need to know why. Story 4. Asking for help. Even just asking questions. Asking for that raise, for more information, for advice. Example, I go fishing with my brothers often, and sometimes I'll ask other random fishermen about the methods or bait they're using and they'll help me out or tell me. I'll end up learning new things and practicing it and catching more fish. My brothers just say it's because I'm a girl and that's why they help me. But I think most times people just don't mind sharing information if you ask them in a respectful and kind manner. Helping others mean okay and the right normal thing to do. Asking for help mean having to accept you are an utter failure at everything and shouldn't even be trying to do whatever you are doing and you owe anyone who helps you more than you can ever pay back. Story 5. Getting enough sleep. It's like a secret hack for everything: productivity, mood, health. If you snore or feel like you're not getting proper sleep, you may have sleep apnea. Seeing a doctor and getting a CPAP is the most impactful thing I've done for my life. If this is you, you know how caffeine works for a bit, but it never ever lets you actually focus, and you could take a nap after a pot of coffee. You're just exhausted. Your life will change forever with proper sleep. Life is clearer. Decisions are easier. Problems are less stressful. Everything takes less energy. You're happy for once. See a doctor. Story 6. A good, reliable, trustworthy partner. I met my now husband when I was 17, he was 19, married him when we were 20 and 22. We've raised 2 daughters together and he was a 50/50th parent all the way. Diapers, middle of the night feedings, chaperoning field trips, the whole 9 yards. He's now an amazing grandfather to our grandson. But what puts him over the top, in terms of being an off-the-charts great partner, is how he has handled my terminal cancer diagnosis. Not only has he taken care of me emotionally, he's been physically taking care of me more and more as I get sicker. Both of our daughters live many states away, so my care will continue to fall mostly on my husband. Not once has he complained or made me feel like a burden, which I most certainly am. So yeah, I know this is easy for someone who found her soulmate at 17, but I can't overstate how important it is to pick a good partner. Story 7. Not being afraid to speak up, really. It is difficult only in some cases, but if you learn it, it will help you a lot in life. I'm 30 and just getting around to this idea. For example, I'm super introverted and non-confrontational. But one evening I was at my apartment pool with my partner, but this one large group was playing crap country music over a Bluetooth speaker that we could hear from the other side of the pool. After much complaining with my partner, I got the gumption to swim over and kindly asked that they turn their music down just a little bit. They were super apologetic and immediately turned down the music. Boom, problem solved with just a little bit of interaction. Story 8. One of the biggest cheat codes in life that people don't seem to realize? Being kind to people even when you don't have to be. Seriously, it's like a life hack with hidden bonuses. People tend to remember those who made them feel good, whether it's a compliment, a simple "how's your day," or just listening when they're having a rough one. It opens doors, creates opportunities, and builds connections in ways that are more powerful than people think. Also, being kind doesn't just help others, it makes you feel better too. It's like a cheat code for leveling up in life, and it's free. Story 9. Building strong networks and connections. It's like having a secret map to opportunities that others might miss. I tell this to my kids all the time. I can't count the number of people that I've had just a cursory interaction with in high school, college, that have shown up later in life. I found so many people that are supportive and helpful 20+ years later because they have a positive memory of me. I just tell them to be nice to everyone because, well, you just should, but also, you never know the ripple effect you can have and when karma comes back. It costs nothing to be nice, and you have nothing to gain by being mean to people. This is a key reason why some people always seem lucky. It's because they know how to be opportunistic and leverage their situation and network to their advantage. Small things like recognizing an opportunity to build stronger rapport with someone important in your organization that then leads them to consider you for a job opening down the road, etc. Many people don't recognize these opportunities and just let these small moments pass by them. Story 10. I hate to say it, but being thin. After losing a lot of weight, it's crazy how different the world treats you. I lost close to 40% of my total body weight through dietary changes alone. I had zero goal, almost no planning, and had to learn a lot along the way, but the amount of pain relief on joints, significantly less headaches, stomach aches, nausea, etc., was an unexpected bonus that has continued to pay off. I wouldn't say my level of energy has really changed at all, but my overall positivity has improved quite a bit as I spend far less time dwelling on health and various aches and pains. Story 11. Listen, and don't interrupt unless it's to ask a question that helps you understand. Maybe it's just a pet peeve of mine, but it seems like anytime someone tries to vent or has something they're excited about, someone has to interrupt. They'll relate their own tangentially related story. Then the conversation never seems to get back to the original person. When I see it happen, I always try to steer the conversation back to the original person, even if I have to interrupt the interrupter to do it. As long as someone isn't being unreasonable, just let them finish. It makes them feel better, and everyone just needs someone to listen from time to time. This ties in with something my grandpa used to say. If you're dealing with someone really angry, don't try to argue with them. As long as they don't look like they're about to take a swing at you, just listen and let them have their say until they run down. Until they do, anything you say in return is only going to make them angrier. In the end, they'll be a lot calmer and easier to deal with. My natural tendency is to argue or defend myself, so it sometimes takes a lot of willpower not to bite their head off in return. Grandpa was right, though. When I do manage to let them run down on their own, they often embarrass themselves and end up a bit sheepish. This, of course, does not apply to abusive people. Sometimes people lose their cool. Those who do it continually or cross the line don't get a free pass. Story 12. Asking for help. We finally asked for help when my son was a month old. My husband and I were delirious from lack of sleep, even with turn-taking. My husband was literally hallucinating. My son would not sleep without being held, so we asked the only family nearby, his aunt and cousins, if someone would come and hold him one night so we could sleep. Obviously, he or I would feed him when it was time, but we just needed someone to stay up one night and hold him while he slept so we could get some sleep. We got no help. Aunt is too old to stay up all night. Expected, it was more asking her to ask the cousins since I didn't have their number, and the cousins weren't comfortable with babies, so they said no. So we got no help. I took more of the night shift so my husband could get more sleep because I was able to sleep a little better holding the baby, switching from 8 to 2 my sleep, and 2 to 8 his sleep, to 8 to 12 my sleep, and 12 to 8 his sleep. Baby is now almost 9 months. My husband went back to work after 3 months, and I haven't gotten more than a 4-hour straight stretch of sleep since my son was 2 months old because he won't take soothing from my husband at night anymore. He'll just cry harder until I hold him. Story 13. I was in Venezuela in the 90s trying to get home to the US. The flights got delayed and I was in a line in Caracas, watching person after person take out their frustration on the poor woman at the counter. When it was my turn, I immediately apologized to the woman at the counter for the way that people had been treating her. I told her that I understood that it was not her fault and she was just trying to do her job. She asked me and my wife to sit nearby and gave us food vouchers. About a half hour later, she came and got us, and took us to another airline where she got us free seats to the US. I was recently in Belgium, and my train tickets, for whatever reason, were not valid. The trains had changed, and things were messed up. When the conductor explained it to me, I thanked him for his help and asked him what I could do to rectify the situation. He got me to my destination and went out of his way to help me and my group. I watched another group yell at him over the same situation. They did not get the same treatment as us. I honestly do not understand people that think mistreating someone will encourage them to give you what you want. Story 14. Daily exercise. To people who think I don't enjoy exercise, this may not sound like a cheat code, but if you can push yourself a little bit more and more, walking before you jog before you run, it is crazy how much better you can feel about yourself. Doing something that you thought you could never do is such a great confidence, mental health booster, on top of the physical benefits. Weirdly, an exercise session can be a bit like smoking too much weed. You just remind yourself that this physical state that you're in is temporary. And you can get through it for another X minutes, and then we'll return to normal. LOL. Story 15. If you're anything like me, a handful of supplements can solve 90% of your problems. I had a terrible diet, can't get to sleep, can't stay asleep, always tired, falling asleep. Daily multivitamin fixes most of the problems caused by my bad diet. I used to get all these little random muscle twitches. Gone. Can't get to sleep? 10 milligrams melatonin, especially when I need to change my sleep schedule and go to bed 4 hours early. 10 milligrams melatonin. Relax watching TV for 30 to 45 minutes, and slowly my eyes start to droop and I can actually fall asleep. Can't stay asleep? Magnesium. I can't thank my wife enough for introducing me to it. From about 18 to 32 years old, I could never really sleep for more than 6 hours at a time, and I'd always end up taking naps throughout the day. Magnesium before bed, bang, I'm out for 8 hours. Magnesium and melatonin together, not recommended, but if you really need to go to sleep and stay asleep for 8 hours to pay off that sleep debt, it works. It feels like a cheat code. What's a hobby you picked up during quarantine that you still enjoy? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Running. Lost 20 pounds and I'm going to run my 6th marathon. I had been running more or less regularly before the pandemic, but only short distances, usually around 3-5 kilometers. But during the pandemic, I started going for longer distances and did my first marathon in late 2020. I've kept it up ever since. The funny thing is, though, for me the pandemic wasn't all that different from normal life, even though we had very long lockdowns. But I had already been working from home before. For some reason, that period was also super busy at work, so I was really jealous of all those people who had time off to pursue some hobbies. Story 2. When COVID hit, I quit going to fast food places. About 2 months later, I caught myself in the mirror like, what this crap? Am I losing weight? Just by not eating pure garbage. Got myself an elliptical for the garage, placed a TV in front of it, and sometimes I can go up to 3 hours. I cut myself off at 3 because says that's the max benefit you can get in a day from physical exercise. I went from a 418 pathetic level of fat, currently down to 284. With me being 6 feet 6 inches, it's what I call socially fitting in. Story 3. Dungeons and Dragons. My son has wanted to watch Stranger Things for years, and we had plenty of time during quarantine, so we watched the whole series. During the show, he asked if I ever played. My mom's husband never let me as a child, so I said no, but I had always been interested. We watched some videos and bought some books. I figured out one of my coworkers had played since he was a kid, so I asked for some pointers. He offered to DM for us, and we've been running campaigns since. My youngest was always interested in what we did on Saturday nights, but too shy to join. She is 6 now and finally joined our party. Just me and my 2 kids versus my DM coworker. We have a ton of fun, and if it interests them, I'm all in. Story 4. During the pandemic, I fixed and cleaned a dusty old turntable along with some old vinyl records. I also got addicted to experimenting with coffee, incorporating various sources of sweetness, and even infusing with random fruits. Immediately after the pandemic, I bought an espresso machine. Saving a few more money, I then bought a cheap Audio-Technica turntable. Now, I own a cozy coffee shop with my vinyl records to play some Italian jazz or soft music throughout the day. Side note, the album More Today Than Yesterday by Spiral Staircase made me fall in love with collecting records. And I never looked back. Story 5. Leatherworking and 3D printing. It started with wanting to learn how to make wallets and watch straps. Then I came across a 3D printer that had laser etching capabilities as well, which I planned to use to print leather templates I had created. I figured I could use the laser etching feature to add engravings to the leather as well, since I could. But I quickly learned that 3D printing on its own is its own hobby as well, and leaned more toward that. I now don't have much time for either, but I still try to create stuff once in a while. I still use the first wallet I ever made, and I'm currently learning how to create my own simple 3D designs. Still have the same crap printer, but it's the one I learned on, so I don't mind it. Story 6. Archery. But just for target practice, I don't actually hunt. During quarantine, I was taking a lot of walks. I live in a pretty rural mountain town, and I noticed an archery course in the woods. I found out it belongs to the local sportsman's lodge, and then I found out the course I saw was one of 4. It's pretty cool. There's shots going uphill, downhill. You have to hit some targets between trees. All the while, it's a one-way course, so you're also taking a walk through beautiful wooded areas. It's pretty addicting, honestly. Story 7. I got into reading again. I've always had books, but only in the aftermath of Corona I started reading multiple books per year. I haven't read that much this summer, but now that it's over, I'll probably get back to my 1 per month average. Also started collecting Pokemon cards again with my kids. I bought the sets that I had as a kid on the second-hand market to get us started, and since then, we've been slowly adding cards to the collection. Yesterday, we spent a couple of hours around the dinner table opening packs. It's great to see how happy they are finding Pokemon that they don't have in their binder yet, and how happy it makes them. They don't care how much a card is worth value-wise, and are just as happy just finding one that they really like. And I love that innocent approach to cards in the hobby. Story 8. I learned the mandolin. This is only tangentially related, but I had heard people talking about a new show and hyping the crap out of it, which I thought was weird for what I assumed was a period piece about a musician. I thought that a piano was to a pianist what a mandolin was to a Mandalorian. I also thought WandaVision was a Wanda Sykes sitcom until I saw posters. I'm not bright. I got a book from eBay called The Big Easy Mandolin Tab Book, and worked from that, choosing songs I was familiar with and then watching lessons on YouTube. Once I had the basics, I started to try old Irish jigs and folk songs, which are great, but a lot harder to learn. At least I find them hard. Story 9. Not a hobby, but taking medication. I started having schizophrenia symptoms around November 2019. Spent half of my quarantine days living with my homeless boyfriend whom I met in the psych ward. For a while, I thought I had a close telepathic relationship with Lucifer, and that my boyfriend was the Antichrist, and it was my job to protect him. Later, my delusions changed to Russian spies are after me, and then too there is a huge underground spiritual war going on, and I am a spy for the good guys because the bad guys think I'm one of them, but I'm not, and Dave Chappelle is our leader. I was in and out of the hospital all throughout this time, until I finally got put on a medication that worked around the time that quarantine ended. I've never felt more stable in my life, and I'm finally getting sober and getting my life back on track. Thank you, God, or maybe Lucifer, for making me lose my mind and embarrass the crap out of myself at a time when everybody was staying home. Story 10. Mine hardly counts because I don't enjoy it. LOL. I started full, all-out, and COVID-exclusive self-immersion in and intensive study of French. I wanted to see how fluent I could get by the end of it. I ended up keeping that up for some time even after lockdowns were over, until I found a job. I now speak fluent French, so rarely fluent in fact that I'm used to people just assuming that I grew up speaking the language. When I tell them it's my second language, they shrug it off like I mean I grew up bilingual, but that I didn't prefer French growing up. No, literally, I learned it like 4.5 years ago. LOL, I don't enjoy it because it's French, and I love to meme on French now. I still watch some YouTubers I found at that time, and I still interact with French speakers. So I guess you could say I enjoy it. It just feels like a language I speak now, I guess. Story 11. I stumbled across a remote control boat for like 80% off at a going out of business sale for a local pharmacy chain. Bought it on a whim, thinking I'd give it to one of the kids in my wife's orbit. The thing ended up being stupid fun. Eventually it got stranded in pond muck by one of said kids, and that was the end of that. Or so everybody thinks. In reality, I spent a work boot reimbursement check from work on couple $100 worth of RC boat. It's at the low end of hobby grade, but with a 2,200 kW brushless motor and a few minor tweaks, it'll hold 45 miles per hour on smooth water for approximately 12 minutes before hitting a low battery alarm. It lives in the trunk of my car and nobody else is aware of its existence. The overnight shift I work can be a bastard, and on those drive home with the radio off sorta days, I'll pull into the riverfront park and rip that mofo up and down the river for an intense 10 minutes or so, then head home. It's a little rebellion that helps maintain sanity, just frivolous fun purely because I want to. Nobody would care. I'm the sole breadwinner and my wife would be happy about me buying myself a little something, but I'm not telling. Story 12. Drinking. Just know that there is a better experience in life without alcohol. It may seem impossible to go a day sober, but trust me, it feels a million times better when you wake up refreshed without a hangover every day. Starting way before COVID, I drank 750 milliliters of whiskey or vodka per day. Yes, every dang day without skipping a beat. Christmas, first day of my new job, my niece's first and second birthday party, even at a friend's funeral. I drank every single day. It's when I looked in the mirror and my eyes were yellow, and my belly was bloated, and I'm really skinny. Telltale signs of liver failure. I still couldn't stop, my body needed it. Eventually, I had to pick if I want to die like this or quit, and I quit cold turkey. Horrible idea, by the way. Always detox at a hospital because you can die from alcohol withdrawal. Long story long, I was able to quit, and I've been sober since 2020. It's possible, and you can do it as well if a bastard like me can do it. Send me a DM if you want to talk or just need someone to lean on. I gotcha. Story 13. I got into crypto trading, one of the few ways to escape a broken system the government demonizes to keep people from financial freedom. Crypto speculation is gambling. If other participants in the market predict a coin's price will go up in the future, then they start buying it now and the price starts going up immediately until it is unclear whether the price will go up or down. If the other participants in the market predict that a coin's price will go down, then they sell and the price immediately goes down until it is unclear whether it will go up or down. Trades require a buyer and seller. To buy low, someone else has to be willing to sell low. To sell high, someone else has to be willing to buy high and risk being left holding the bag. Any profits a speculator might gain from the crypto market don't come out of thin air. They come from other speculators that are also trying to make money. Any legal strategy, pattern, or regularity that could possibly be used to reliably predict prices stops working when other market participants discover it and incorporate it into their prices. It's incredibly unlikely you will be able to find a pattern and working strategy that all the other speculators have missed and be able to take advantage before they do. You aren't a high-frequency trading firm. Story 14. D&D Dungeon & Dragon. I'm not a gamer at all, with maybe the occasionally game of chess online. When we couldn't meet up in person, we decided to start playing to maintain the friendship and not drift apart. The group taught me the rules, and we soon started to make and navigate worlds together. It's a group of 4 people, with their partners sometimes joining. We normally start with the rounds, where we give the group updates, which always turns into jokes. In fact, some of the best laughs, moments I've had over the last 4 years have come from my D&D group. The thing I really appreciate is that I've managed to see them all grow with their careers, babies, marriages, mortgages, etc. We meet up once a week, and I love them all to bit. Story 15. I was a curriculum developer and teacher at a boarding school in Beijing, but was caught outside of the country at the beginning of COVID while on holiday for Chinese New Year. When we went remote, I started learning some basics of animation so that I could write little sketches to teach my kids English concepts and having English and Chinese subtitles with the learning objectives that I set for them. The first time we watched one of my animations as a class, the kids laughed at one of the jokes, and it was the first time I had heard anything that sounded close to joy in months. That was enough to keep me going. Fast forward to today, and I'm out of the education field. However, I took what I'd learned from digital art and animation and the language learning techniques I'd picked up from learning Mandarin and learned how to code. These days, I'm making an indie game with a friend, and it's the most joyful thing I do every day. I get to do everything: art, storytelling, animation, scripting, etc. It feels like all of my experiences and passions since I was a kid have coalesced into something deeply enjoyable and meaningful to me. What is something that truly terrifies you about our world? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Social media's power to manipulate and divide people on a global scale, and the speed at which misinformation spreads online. Misinformation would not be as effective if the majority of people possessed critical thinking skills and actively used them. Social networks are filled with a large amount of misinformation, which often misleads the public to make wrong decisions, stimulates negative public emotions, and poses serious threats to public safety and social order. The spread of misinformation in social networks has also become a widespread concern among scholars. Story 2. That every single person you know you will see for the very last time at some point. You will likely have no idea when this point comes, and for many of the people you still consider good friends, this may have already passed. Also, you'll rarely say goodbye. Relationships just end because we focus on what's in front of us. Arguments end with ignorance rather than understanding conversations, and death hits us like shooting stars showing up unexpectedly in the night. Story 3. The fact that we've created nuclear weapons that could destroy humanity terrifies me. It feels like we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. At least during the Cold War, the governments who had nukes were fairly stable and understood mad. We also knew who had them. Now, less stable governments are working hard to get as if it was a badge of honor. In reality, it just creates more targets. Plus, the US and Russia have both acknowledged that they've lost some. We have no idea where they are or who controls them. Story 4. The fact that our human bodies were designed to live very similar to our ape ancestors, in the woods with clean air and water, living in small groups, and eating food from nature. The majority of normal aches and pains come from our bodies being designed for nature, yet we choose to live in the most non-nature way possible. Our bodies hurt because they aren't designed to sit in a cubicle for 8+ hours a day. We live in cities of millions of people, not small groups. Our food industry actually needed a law so that they'd stop putting sawdust into our meat because, money. We choose to spend our time chasing an arbitrary and frivolous thing like money instead of bettering ourselves. We aren't made to sit at a desk or watch TV. We are made to live in nature. Story 5. Islamization, which is quietly but surely taking over the world. The amount of change in Europe over the last 25 years is astounding. In the last French protest against Macron, you could see more Palestinian flags than French flags. The complete blind eye being turned toward it as well. The governments of the countries being flooded with this crap immediately demonize the people against it. Story 6. We're on the edge of a climate disaster we can't comprehend, which will forever alter the planet and the human race. And still somehow we're expected to go to work like everything is normal, and scientists aren't panicking every single day at what they see. Apparently, scientists have become apathetic because they've been sounding the alarm for decades, and governments don't want to listen. Edit, love getting downvoted for this shows how brainwashed people are. You all keep your heads in the sand then about reality if it makes you feel better. Story 7. Industrial civilization is only a couple hundred years old. We think of all its trappings: electricity, cars, advanced communications, plentiful food that we don't have to worry about growing, as the default, because no one remembers a time before them, but this has all occurred in a blink of an eye by geological standards. Our social structures, our economy, all of it, this is all brand new and evolving rapidly, and the rate of its rapid evolution is increasing too. How sustainable is this world? The only one we've ever known. We simply don't have much information to go on. Climate change, nuclear war, disease, some technology-driven breakdown in the social fabric. All of these could plunge us back into the dark ages. And without industrial-scale agriculture and complicated supply chains, the Earth can only feed a tiny fraction of its human population. That's what keeps me up at night, the idea that, at some point during my life, almost everyone I know and everything I care about could all come to a rapid end. I don't know how likely that is, but neither does anyone else. Story 8. I guess just what happens to the body after you die. Regardless of what people believe about the soul and the afterlife, and something that I'm not talking about here, the fact is that your body, the vessel you used your whole life, has to somehow just die away. Being buried and decomposing is just horrific, and it's spooky that it's natural. You can cremate yourself, but even that process of your body being destroyed in fire, though shorter than decomposing, is morbid and terrifying. It's not even the death that terrifies me as much as what happens to the body after. Story 9. It's been something that has plagued me for most of my adult life. I'm not particularly afraid of physically dying. I'm almost phobic about not knowing at what point awareness actually ends. We are all aware that we only use a small portion of our brains, and it's capable of doing some crazy crap. After death, how long until electrical currents in our brain truly stops? Doctors may declare a person brain dead as they can't detect any electrical impulses. But can they really say there aren't some small, undetectable electrical impulses hiding deep inside the brain that current medicine is unable to identify? Does the process of dying and the stages of decay create electrical currents that continue to keep the brain aware, even the tiniest little bit? These are things nobody can ever answer, and we won't know until it happens to us. I'm sorry, but I'm not educated enough to think this way, and all I wind up doing is scaring myself and feeding my own phobia. Story 10. There are people. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, I hate people, but like, people kill people. People molest animals, children, and somehow justify it. They create religion, a holier-than-thou mindset that has tortured and killed so many, hating and killing each other over differences. Humanity is terrifying. We can literally wipe out other species, and we have as well as ourselves. Humanity is disgusting, hateful, and cruel. Yes, it has positive moments, but remember, one human powerful and manipulative enough wiped out over 6 million people. And that wasn't even the first genocide in history. Or the last. It's scary how evil humans can be. Story 11. People are living life right now like the planet isn't just completely dying around us. Mother Nature is revolting against us. In the words of the late, great George Carlin, the planet has been through a lot worse than us. Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms. The magnetic reversal of the poles. Hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets and asteroids and meteors, worldwide floods, tidal waves, worldwide fires, erosion, cosmic rays, recurring ice ages. And we think some plastic bags and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference? The planet isn't going anywhere. We're going away. Pack your crap, folks, we're going away. And we won't leave much of a trace either. Maybe a little styrofoam. The planet will be here and will be long gone. Just another failed mutation. Just another closed-end biological mistake. An evolutionary cul-de-sac. The planet will shake us off like a bad case of fleas. The planet will be here for a long time after we're gone. And it will heal itself, it will cleanse itself, because that's what it does. It's a self-correcting system. The air and the water will recover, the earth will be renewed. And if it's true that plastic is not degradable, well, the planet will simply incorporate plastic into a new paradigm, the earth plus plastic. The earth doesn't share our prejudice toward plastic. Plastic came out of the earth. The earth probably sees plastic as just another one of its children. Could be the only reason the earth allowed us to be spawned from it in the first place. It wanted plastic for itself. Didn't know how to make it. Needed us. Could be the answer to our age-old, egocentric philosophical question, why are we here? Story 12. The number of people who have absolutely no grasp on logical reasoning and can't understand logical fallacies when taught. I took a college course about logical reasoning and identifying logical fallacies, for example, straw man argument, red herring, etc. I didn't have to study to pass the course with an A because the grading curve turned every 95 on a test quiz into Dave AA 100. At the midpoint in the class, the professor revoked the grading curve because half the class of 35 people were failing badly. The other half of the class had A's. A few people asked for my help studying for the final, and it was like teaching bricks. They'd learned about a logical fallacy and couldn't identify it in text no matter what. Story 13. That we could at any time be wiped out by a cosmic or otherwise catastrophic global event. There have been a half a dozen or so said events throughout the history of our species, where the magnitude of the disaster would have been enough to wipe out a civilization equivalent to ours. Think about it. A great flood, asteroid impact, or sudden ice age occurs. How many of us have the skills to live in a world without modern amenities? Only the most avid survivalist would stand a chance, and even then, most of the world's knowledge would be gone forever. Never mind the fact that we don't know half of the threats looming within our solar system. We've had a number of near misses in recent memory that we know about, some we didn't even see until they narrowly passed. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Story 14. People's ignorance. A lot of people believe in lies and kind of go with the flow for all the wrong reasons. People are all naturally born stupid, obviously, but I feel like more and more people are fine with staying ignorant stupid. I know breaking yourself away from the rose-tinted glasses is both hard and scary. I was once one of those people who chose to be blissfully ignorant till I forced myself to look at reality, but I feel like people are too. Comfortable being ignorant and unaware of issues in the world and government that it's scarier than being unaware of it. Even if someone just started slowly easing themselves out of blissful ignorance is fine. I also wish more people would try to do their own research on topics they may not fully understand instead of listening to people who are biased one way or the other. Story 15. If there's something to be done, there's someone to ask for help in doing it. There are support groups for people coping with grief and addiction to help you get to a better place. Colleges to attend in order to learn medicine. People dedicated to helping you figure out taxes. People specializing in the nutritional needs of newborn babies. The world is full of experts who can tell you what to expect doing almost anything, and things we don't have answers for yet will one day have experts for them. Except death. No one is an expert in death. No one can tell you what to expect, how to do it, assure you they've done it before, and you'll be okay. It's the only thing we ever do 100% alone our entire lives, and there's no beginning to even theorize what happens afterward, but people still wage wars while we're living because they claim to know. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.